Here we go. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Vivek, and I'm very happy to have Arunava Sinha and Ashoke Mukhopadhyay, the author of the book A Ballad of Remittent Fever. And I think I call translators writers, and they are authors and writers of books and not translators. So I'm in chat, I'm in conversation with both the writers of the book in that sense. And I'm so happy to be in conversation with them because this book is extremely unique in one way, to be on the long list of JCB Prize for Literature 2020. And I'm really, I'm disappointed that it didn't make it to the shortlist. I'll be very honest after reading it. So, so really, but I think despite that, everybody should read this book for what it is. And I'll jump right in with my question to both of you. So Ashok sir, for you, my question is that you are not a doctor, you're not related to medicine, correct? And you wrote a book about it, of course, which you can write about from any vantage point. So how much time did it take you? What was your research like in putting such a book of such a great proportion together? And Arunava, right after that, the question for you is, to translate something like that, um, how difficult or easy was it when it came to research, and did you have to do your own research and refer to some notes depending on what he was talking about in the original?
First of all, it took me around 5 years to do the researching and all. And then the Bengali book, which Arunava translated, it came out some 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, when the book was published, there was no trace of COVID anywhere under the sun. So when the book was published by Alex Book Company on 10th of April 2020, our planet was under the spell of high fever, which is corona. But jokes apart, what I'm trying to say is this. I guess I did research a lot, and the challenge was how to convert these researches in the form of a novel. Since as a subject is very a bit of dry subject to the ordinary readers or normally the people the way they read, it was my challenge how to convey the what I've learned, convey my understanding to the readers. That was a real challenge. So I tried to do some kind of seamless teaching of the facts with the fiction. That was my endeavor. But Arunava must be telling, since Arunava is the first reader of my book, and since he decided to translate it, Arunava will be in a better position from a reader's point of view. But as far as I'm concerned, my actually it is an honest research. It's not that I do anything else, but I have my understanding and I have to convey my understanding drop by drop to the readers. For that, I've got a good number of doctor friends and all. They help me. But my question was I questioned them right from the morning to the evening, and some of the friends were absolutely tirelessly they answered all my queries. And while doing the researches, I could collect, and it is my sheer luck that I could collect a good number of textbooks of those types. That is a separate story. How did I collect and all the stuff? But I read all these textbooks, and since my basics was in science, and from my childhood days, I was interested in reading this kind of medical textbooks and all, and that's why I have that kind of intention. And another thing helped me since my childhood. I think I have suffered from almost all the diseases. There is no disease left. Right from enteric fever to everything. Dengue, whatnot. I've suffered from every kind of disease, even in some kind of neuro disease also. So I have gone through that. And whenever I went through any kind of disease, I used to ask the doctors why did it happen, how did it happen, how is it cured, why this medicine is applied here. In that way, in a way, the diseases help me to learn the subject more than anything else, more than the textbooks. That is a great help. So that's how I did it in a nutshell. But I think Uruna will be in better position to tell about the book since he was the first reader of the book and he decided to translate. But before Uruna says anything, I must say that the way, there's a magnificent way he picked up the subject and the grasp of Uruna is great. The way he understood the subject and he definitely interacted with me, but mostly about say 95% he understood the subject pretty well. Only he interacted on certain things, but that is not nothing on the medicine, but something else. So he interacted with me, and thereafter he did a splendid job. Thank. Over to Vivek.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that. Arunava, your thoughts on how was the process like of translation? Did you have to, write your own bits into it, and how did you work around that?
Yeah, thanks for having us this evening, Vivek, and thank you, Ashok, for writing this book. So, as a translator, it is my philosophy never to add anything or take away anything from the original text. So, I wouldn't dream of writing or rewriting anything on my own. The text must stand the way it is. And my readers must have the confidence that they're reading the same text, even if it's in a different language. So I don't want to mislead anyone in that respect. The other thing is that when I translate, increasingly these days, I try not to read the book before I translate it. Sometimes I may read a chapter or even less. Very often I'm drawn to a book on the basis of reviews and what I've heard about it. So this was one such book. From the title, I heard the title, and Obidam Jore Rupkatha, and that was it. I was sold from that point onwards. And I've read earlier books of Ashok Das, so I knew what to expect. I knew that it would be fictional storyline, but very strongly laced with research and historical material. So I was prepared for that. What was most interesting was that I was distracted very often while translating because the facts were so exciting. And they led to such a voyage of discovery for myself that I went down many rabbit holes. So, it was
Imagine,
very annoying.
because, sorry, go on.
Yeah, it was very annoying in a sense because I wanted to carry on translating and more importantly, carry on reading. But because I am in the first place researching some of the things, and all that I'm researching are not facts, frankly, but essentially spellings, because you want to get the spelling right in the English version. So I'm essentially researching the spellings of the names and the diseases on the internet, right? And some technical terms, which I realize have been translated from the English into Bangla for the book. So I must make sure that they're restored. The original versions are restored. There's not even translation. This is restoration in that sense. So I can't bring translation skills here. I just have to make sure I find the right term. So intermittent fever is one such example. I was not aware of the phrase intermittent fever. I'm sorry, remittent fever. I knew of intermittent fever, but not remittent. So it was when I was researching Obiram, and then I discovered the difference between remittent and intermittent. So there were many such discoveries, and it was very exciting. But also I realized in the process that what is so skillful in this novel is that the facts are not thrown at the reader devoid of context. The facts are discovered or enunciated by the characters themselves in the course of their work. So at no point is the author intervening with their voice to say, I will now give you a page of Wikipedia material. Yeah. So whatever comes out very naturally through the storyline. So if a doctor is ruminating, or if a doctor is providing some background, it is because they're actually working in that area at that point of time. So while it is very rich in this information, it is not overwhelming or irrelevant.
No, definitely. For me, I think that's when as a reader, I can say it's so engaging for the reader to turn the pages constantly because, like you said, there's so much context given and there's so much humor. This book is so witty in so many places. Like even when they're just, talking about medicine, when there's a conversation between Dwarikanath and Punya about chemistry and medicine, and he's old and he's young and he's a professor now, and about the entire cigarette tin, and so there's this. So for me, those things really stand out so much, and which I never thought, right? Because when you get into such a book, you're constantly at the back of the mind thinking, oh, there'll be a lot of information thrown at me. But coming back to my question for the two of you again is the women in the book. I was extremely amazed by the agency that they have, by the silent determination. All the characters, whether it is Madhu, whether it is Lavanya, whether it is Amodini, and even what's her name? I'm so sorry. Why did I forget Digit's lady friend's name? But I think Alok Jarna, yeah, all of them. So for me, I really want to know, Ashokda, that what role did you already plan for them to have such strong women characters in the book, or did it just come about as you were writing it? Because it was so empowering to just see them like this.
Did is normally I've seen some of the ladies,
Sorry, I think his
and
screen is frozen.
I've seen some of the ladies. And basically, when you're writing something, when you're creating a character, maybe a kind of impression of those characters are embossed on them or implanted on them, like that. But thing is, this normally I've seen these kind of very sensitive ladies, and especially in joint families. If you Bengali joint family, Urno must be knowing some of the ladies were there till the other day who were very sensitive and who used to like captain of a team. They used to run the family, and they are actually the is a matriarchy in a joint family. Yeah, the patriarchy is there, but the absolutely the home front, it was a matriarchy, and there the system is absolutely fantastic. The kind of sensitivity they had, the kind of shock they used to absorb, is a untold story, I should say. So I knew some of these characters because I was born in a joint family. There I've seen this kind of characters. Was very very still now lady. There's a widow. They're shouldering the entire responsibility of that family. So this kind of sensitivities are there, and that's why I'm telling you. Digressing a bit,
Sure.
if you have seen Satyajit Ray Charulata, the way he created Charulata, definitely that was the hint was there in Rabindranath's original story, Not to Need. But actually, he chose the character Madhavi and all for that reason that they will look a bit sensitive. Initially, he thought of casting Sharmila Tagore, but he didn't do that. Finally, he went to Madhavi. That shows in the joint families earlier days, basically this kind of ladies were there, and I have seen this kind of ladies who are the product of joint families. That's why those impressions were there in me. But while writing this, I used those memories. That's all.
Thank you. Arunava, what are your thoughts about the women in this book?
Yeah, the women were, I mean, I was quite fascinated by Madhu, and I felt that she was, in a sense, the fulcrum as well, along with Kritindranath. And the two of them really carry the, let's say, the emotional narrative forward, while Dwarikanath provides the rational element, the strength, but really the wind beneath his sails comes from his son and Madhu, and they take it into the spaces that perhaps this is what makes it a real novel. I would say otherwise it would have remained a little bit of a fictional amalgamation of the lives of doctors in certain set situations. Although, of course, Dwarikanath was anything but conventional. He broke with his family in every day. In fact, his father threw him out because he wanted to be a doctor. So he definitely set the mold there in saying that break out and don't adhere to tradition. But Madhu most definitely is also remarkable in the relationship she forges with Dwarikanath, who is such a strong rational proponent of allopathy. Madhu herself is an Ayurvedic doctor.
Yes.
But very interestingly, she brings the same element of rationality and rigor into Ayurveda that Dwarikanath does to allopathy. So in that sense, in terms of their mission, they're no different. Their tools may be different, and that is also why they respect each other's sciences.
Yeah. And that's why there's no clash, right? I mean, I just thought that perhaps at some point it would be allopathy versus Ayurveda, but that never happens in the entire book. You know, you said that Kritidanath and Madhu were both fulcrums and like sort of the centerpieces in the book. And yet, I don't know why, as a reader, of course, I think I found them very selfish. They were just operating out of their selfish motives at every time. Like one would leave and not bother, like a mendicant, a doctor who's a mendicant and just treating everyone as he's going on the run. And here you have someone, of course, waiting, but then when the opportunity is presented to them to live their life, which is fair, right? I mean, at some point, he also tells his mama that when they're speaking about when Nepu Mama doesn't accept treatment from him, and then they're saying that, you know, why didn't he? And he feels so bad about it. But still, I still find them very selfish. But yes, they are very crucial to the book, and everything sort of revolves around their decisions and their actions. So, Ashokda, and what was going through your head when you were writing these characters, and they would do this, and you know, this is how the story would move ahead? Did you at any point feel the same way, that, you know, they were acting out of a selfish motive?
Not really, but what I'm trying to say is that this is genetic. The way Dwarikanath came out of his family, that was a great revolt in those days.
Yeah.
When his father, Ramkanto, absolutely opposing that. So, simply he didn't care. He did care if he. And then he came out of the family with a very meager sum of money for the admission in a medical college. That was a great, I should say, nowadays we cannot realize that. But that time, it was a great job he did. So when a person, there is that kind of revolutionary attitude there in the person, it is genetically transmitted in the future generations too. And Dwarika inherited that. Now we see the life of Dwarika.
Yeah.
Dwarika grown up in that kind of atmosphere. Sorry, I'm talking of Kritinduna.
Yeah.
When Kritinduna grown in that kind of atmosphere, his father Dwarika was actually Christian. He embraced Christianity. He must have read that.
Yes.
So open kind of family. They are not superstitious. But in a family, when a cousin leaves and his own sister died, and in a family, when the head of the family is busy all the time, and in that kind of atmosphere, when the childs grow, so obviously the Kritindunath will find a friend in Madhu Madhavi.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong in that.
Of course.
But Kritindunath used to get a lot of food for thought. And likewise, vice versa, Madhu Madhavi used to get that from that Kritindunath too. So they became good friends, great friends, and as you grow, you absolutely just think of your adolescent period. Just think of our adolescence period. When he came out of that, we had a sense of revolt. We used to absolutely disobey the systems. That's what he started doing. And since father is away for a long time, so-called there is no rule of the way we have nowadays. So naturally, you are absolutely open birds. They are doing it. They liked it each other because this guy used to get a lot of food for thought. And then Madhu Madhavi was very sensitive.
Yeah.
That sensitivity is there in the family. So naturally, we'll be best friends. And from there, if it is transmitted to that kind of sensuousness, nothing wrong in that. This is also another thing in the joint family. Those who have grown in the joint family, this kind of thing used to happen. But it went to that extent. At the same time, when the father said that you have to marry like this, they used to marry that also. That is a patriarchy. That is the, what should I say? That is patriarchy, and then insisted they have to marry like this. They married it. But when he came back from the battlefield, when you see somebody, then naturally it will be restored. And at no point of time, he never disowned Lavanyaprabha because he used to like Lavanyaprabha his own way. And Lavanyaprabha is also equally sensitive, that he realized later. And then he gave two examples of his demonic behavior. One of is that with Lavanya, the way he treated Lavanya, he also realized that he is not doing the right kind of thing. That is the beauty of Kritindona. He is suffering from mental agony. He is suffering from some contradictions. He is not a monolithic kind of character. If you see that when he is treating the typhus patient in Mesopotamia front, one hand is challenging the god of death that I have to fight out. I have the armory. I have that kind of arms in my hand. I have to fight out god of death. You are just trying to drag this person to your fold. But I am also no less a warrior. I also try to take him away from your clutch. And after that, when the person died, his immediate target is his shoes, which he had lost a bit of earlier time. This is the character of Kritindona. So there is, if you say sensuous, it's not sensuous really. At the same time, sensuous in broader terms. It should be interpreted as sex. It should be sensuous. It's a very, the way he describes the thing, the way you look at the things, yes, that is sensuous. If you take him this way, I agree to that. But it is not the way the word sensuous is applied nowadays is all the time showing some kind of sexual kind of thing is not that. Not really. Is basically an observer, good observer. When he describes certain things with vivid details, that is one thing.
Thank you. Arunava, what do you have to say about these two? Because at some point I thought they were selfish enough, but then, I was a little torn with their action.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that these two are the most human of all the characters we see in the novel. And they're very true to themselves as humans. They're not trying to hide. They're not trying to lie. They're not trying to be who they're not. So you see that intersection between the human and the ethical doctor and the ethical human being and the conflict. And you see very interesting ways in which this creates tension in their own arcs, which is inevitably going to happen, right? Because you said you were torn, they were torn too. Yeah. They were torn between two paths, essentially. Yeah. And while they may have chosen the one that seemed truer to them, it's not that they did it without any pain or agony. It caused them a great deal of agony as well. But yet they knew that doing anything else would be completely untrue and eventually would fail, perhaps. So that is what I found most interesting. And the fact also that all these things happen in this novel with minimum drama. I mean, normally this is the kind of thing that would lead to all kinds of melodrama in the family, and there would be screaming and shouting and breast beating and so on. Yet look with how much grace every character accepts their reality. Lavanyaprabha being the classic example. Look at the grace with which she accepts everything, and the way she then guides her grandson, who is now, trying to figure out who this mysterious character in the hills is. You could have expected her to be bitter, angry, unhappy, tell him don't bother, but not at all. So to that extent, there is this very beautiful thing about each of the people that endears them to you. You understand their motivations, their difficulties, their internal contradictions, but at no point can you not be on their side, even when you may disapprove, but still you will not give them up.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree. For me, talking about Digit, for me, just that you grow up in a household of women and you're raised by women with no paternal figure as such. So, and that sort of tends to impact the empathy meter in that sense, for lack of a better phrase, in his work. when I see him and how he behaves with Alok Jharna and how he behaves with other women when he goes to the red light district and what he sees there and his reaction to women there. I think it's so beautiful. The way that is also sort of imbibed in the book. So Ashok, what so when you think of a character like Digit, initially you think he's very unempathetic. You think of being as cruel, like when that family is sitting over there in the corner and sleeping on the cement floor in the heat. You see him saying, why are they sleeping here? Tell them to go out. But they come because they have no other choice, and they want that shelter. But as the novel progresses, you see an empathetic side towards him. So where did that come from? Because I initially thought that he was very aloof and he was very stern, but then my emotions towards him changed.
You mean that sequence also, you must have seen that, read it also. When he was informed, he came to know that that rickshaw puller had gone away, and he used to pull the cart and all for taking the people to the Ganges or something.
Yes.
Then what he said is asking that stuff, that one boy, you are a great soul. You gave me a chance to witness this thing. Immediately he realized whatever truth he is seeing, whatever idiom he believes is truncated, is not the lie properly. The moment he came to know this is the sin, immediately changes his vision. So our realizations are like that. We start in one way of the life. Then over a period of time, we realize, no, that is not the whole truth. That is a part truth. Our life is that kind of journey. Na? Every time we understand, develop our opinion about somebody, it cannot be fixed all along for not even 1 year. It is not fixed. It go on changing every time. But I try to show that when a intern is working in a medical emergency, we go this kind of rigid kind of attitude, copybook kind of attitude. Thereafter, after interacting with those patients and tackling the emergency situation, he understands a lot many things. And for this thing, I can tell you this is a fact.
Yeah.
For writing the book, I sat in the emergency of Calcutta Medical College. My friends were there. Was my junior friends. He was intern that time. He was tackling the emergency department. For writing the book only, I sat there for 3 nights, night emergency. When he used to have the night duty, I used to be with him there. And that thing was enacted in front of me. Because it was summer, these guys came, and he told me, Dada, you come this time, I'll show you something interesting. And I've seen that scene. It was like a cinema is enacting in front of me. That was my, I'm fortunate that I had that kind of friends with me and they supported me like this. So in a row, I sat there in the Calcutta Medical Emergency for 3 days. Then I gathered all this kind of information. So that is the thing. These rickshaw pullers, there is a lane just bang opposite Calcutta Medical College, Arpuri lane. They used to stay there. From there, they used to come here whenever there is a power cut or something. That's the thing. So basically, when you start the emergency, coming back to what I'm trying to say, we have a lot of things to understand. No, I not give this kind of treatment. I do that way only. But over a period of time, you have to understand a lot of things. You have to undergo a lot of changes. One thing, just want to add here. The friend which I'm talking of, after passing out, his first posting was another private hospital there. I'm not naming the hospital. He went there as a senior medical officer or something. A patient came. He had some kind of fluid in his lungs. He told me, these authorities didn't allow me to bring out the fluid from the lung. We used to do in the Calcutta Medical College by mechanical process only. Through mechanical, we used to siphon out the lung fluid. The person was suffering, he was suffering breathing trouble. Oh, no, you have to bring in that kind of computer operated machine. The moment you bring it, it will be whole thing, and then they will add the charges on the bill. So that is the instruction of authorities that you cannot do without this. He said we used to do hundreds of times in Calcutta Medical College, and that was the process only. If you wait for the machine, first of all, those days, whether that kind of machine is there or not, no one knows. But since the private hospital, they have bought that kind of machine, so you have to make use of it, you have to do it, for that they can add on the charges. So that's what in Calcutta Medical College is absolutely a university of learning this kind of disease and tackling this kind of patients. So he educated me a lot, enlightened me a lot how they are tackling the patients. The kind of patients which I've cited there, all are real life examples. That's how I understood it drop by drop. And I'm fortunate the doctors helped. Am I clear in my answer, or do you have some questions?
No, very clear. No, sorry, very clear actually. One of my favorite characters in the book, of course, I like them all, but I think the most favorite is Panchanan. For me, the way the character developed throughout the book, and towards I think towards the end when
which character? Just name once. Which character? Which character talk?
Panchanan. Panchu, yes.
Panchanan.
Yes, Panchu, yes. For me, I think I just love how someone who had no knowledge of medicine and knew nothing, when he first meets Dwarikanath and is a necrophiliac in that sense, and how his character arc changes throughout the book, towards the end when he's going to a village and handling the patients there all by himself and tries to convince them to get vaccinated for smallpox and the entire drama that plays out. And he's like a constant shadow, a friend to Dwarikanath and so, where did that character's inspiration come from? And I don't know what your thoughts on that character. I really would like to know. What did you think while you were translating about Pancho?
First of all, a towering personality like Dwarikanath is lonely at the top. For that matter, any character, that kind of towering personality will have to be lonely at the top. But he wants to talk to someone. He wants to unwind before someone. He wants to, what should I say, expose his mind to someone. Normally, these kind of characters of this kind of towering personality, they always try to find out some kind of characters which are maybe they are lower in the educational qualification and all, but they could touch the right chord of that kind of person. It happens. I mean, especially when that kind of personality, they get this kind of characters. That is one. Secondly, in earlier days, even in our childhood, we have seen good compounders, and they are absolutely as good as a doctor on many respects.
Yeah.
In our childhood, I've seen a mixture. They used to offer some kind of stomach disease, anything. They used to offer some kind of red, blue, what kind of mixtures. And doctor used to say that, basically you tell Ratan, you prepare that mixture. They will prepare that kind of mixture and give it to the patient. So those days, so not so much of medicine shops were also there. So doctors, they used to get medicine from the doctor's chamber only. And this compounder has a great role in preparing those kind of medicines as per the direction of the doctors. And these kind of compounders, I'm talking of the compounders, they are very close to these doctors. They could read the psychology of the doctors, and they became, the end of the day, they became the friends of those doctors. This is how the relationship with the doctor and the computer is to grow. That is the scenario. So that's why the Panchanan was absolutely uneducated in this kind of field, but was very sharp too. Grasp was very good. So he could pick up the subject. Even if you now, there are some persons where they're not the electrical engineers, but they could repair any circuit well, better than many of the electrical engineers. How could they do it? Because in any of the power utility company you go, those who are who come for the line repair or some kind of cable fault, etc., they are better engineers than any kind of the way they treat they could repair the thing is definitely the better way than any of the engineers, because that experience, by experience they learn. I've seen one mechanic, by seeing a cable, he could make out that whether it's a live cable or dead cable. So by just seeing in eyes, that is called experience. Now this Panchanan could master that kind of experience, so that this kind of cases, doctors can rely on him. That is one. Secondly, whenever Dwarika used to take Panchanan wherever he goes. India, if you want to hear some songs from Baiji, Panchanan will go. You go to the patient, Panchanan will go along with him. So in this way, he could understand the psychology of Dwarika better than anybody else. That's why slowly he became the most trusted person of Dwarika. He could become, and Dwarika would definitely, is no wonder that Dwarika will find a friend in him. That's how the relationship grew. That's the thing. Otherwise, tell me good logic, Dwarika will depend on whom? Around him? Nowhere in the family. That's why the relationship got in this kind of message. Now over to Arunava.
Yes, please.
No, for me, Panchanan was another example of how, as you said, every character is a complete person in themselves and gets you interested in what's going on in their lives. And with Panchanan particularly, I started visualizing him in some ways, and I almost became as interested in what was going to happen to him, his future, but simultaneously also realized that we were also seeing Dwarikanath through Panchanan's eyes. And that gave us a slightly more rounded perspective of Dwarika. The thing is, the three main the three doctors in this family whose story this novel is, if you look at it, the story of each one is told in a different way.
Yes.
Kritindranath is told in the first person, so that's very close and intimate, and you're inside his head. Dvijitams is told in the third person, but also we're mostly seeing it through his eyes. But Dwarikanath, perhaps because he's somewhat reserved as a person, he's a patriarch and he's not going to easily allow himself to reveal himself, we see him from something of a distance. We don't get inside his head, perhaps with the same kind of openness that we get inside Digit's head with. And Kritindranath, of course, is another matter altogether, because he's telling his own story. So Panchanan, in that sense, became a bridge. He's seeing Dwarikanath, and we are seeing him seeing Dwarikanath. So it became very interesting in that way.
Yeah. That's when I start thinking about Punya, I would have liked to know more about him, which never happens in the entire book. Is it because he's not a doctor? Is it because his story is perhaps not of relevance? Because I wish I would get to know him a little better, because through him perhaps I would get to know Digit a lot more and understand where Digit comes from, and to understand Punya's insecurities as a child without a father, that in that sense. So Ashoka, what do you have to say about that? Why didn't you give Punya a more, say, meaty role in the book?
Punya, basically, Punya was created to amplify Dwarikanath's that kind of feeling with a grandchild. That is one. Where Punya was a grandchild of Dwarika. Just to show the soft corner of Dwarika, just to show the softness of Dwarika, that Punya was created. And Punya absolutely suffering from insecurity. because there is no father. They couldn't make up. Only the Darika used to play father in him. They used to play like a father. Darika used to have to play like a, the grandfather. So Darika used to play father, grandfather put together. So it is a very difficult role for Darika, and Darika manages very skillfully. When you are planning of the marriage of Punya, see the way they are conversing, the way the Punya was talking to Darika in a different kind of manner. The relationship of Kritindunath with Darika was not like that.
Yeah.
The Punno is more friendly, and Darika is more open with Punno. That is a different Darika. As right a little while ago, what Arunava is saying, I definitely agree with that. That Panchanan also created to show the another facet of Darika, another character of Darika. Throwing light from some other angle. Like this Punno was also created to throw light on Darika from another angle. This is like a theater play is acting. So one is Panchanan is throwing light from this angle, he is throwing light from that angle, just to complete the character of Dwarika. That's why he did it. And in many of the families, including Tagore's family, there are some kind of characters with promise. They couldn't complete their life, and a very short notice they died. In fact, this I heard this name. In fact, I borrowed the name of this Punrandranath was from Tagore family history branch, Tagore family tree only. And there was a character like Punrandranath. So that I borrowed that from that. I borrowed the name only, but not the character, so to say, because not much is known about Punrandranath. So that's how it's saying, and Punno was created for that only. Just to show another facet of Darik. Otherwise, how can you show his grandfather, but there is no grandfatherly interaction with anyone? That's how created Punya.
True.
Punya was created more to create Diyattam. But there is no interaction between Diyattam and Punno, but that's why the Diyattam was absolutely grown when father was absolutely small, like that. Otherwise, how can you transmit the genetic pluses and minus to the Diyattam only? Just to continuity.
No, of course.
And there is a word called jumping heredity. So Diyattam inherited some of the characters of the family. Some characters of trait of Dwarika, some trait of Kritindranath also, and there is some Punrandranath also. But as far as the Kritindranath is concerned, the way he is tackling the patient and going like this that shows the wayward attitude of Kritindranath. The genetic faculty has been transmitted to Diyattam. And was thinking in a very that kind of thing when he's interacting with Alok Jhanna, that reminds me the relationship of Madhumadhobi and Kritindranath. That is also there. The way that Alok Jhanna talks is very similar to that kind of child. He's a young Madhumadhobi. Some of the dialogues were created for that only, just to complete that character. Because if you think that way, if you extend that kind of imagination, you may think that probably Madhumadhobi used to talk like this, like Alok Jhanna, the way he is speaking to Diyattam. And the rationality with which he is treating the patients, that reminds us of Dwarikanath.
Yes. That is correct.
If the way he is treating the snake bite patient, the way treating the hypoglycemia patient, that reminds us of the rationality of Dwarikanath. Dwarikanath, that kind of serious we used to treat.
Yeah.
But I never use that kind of thing for Kritindranath, just to show that we barring one when he is fighting the typhus patient.
Yes.
But the typhus patient treatment was just to show the completely opposite character of Kritindranath, of that for the boots. That scene was created just to amplify his role in grabbing the boots which he had lost. And in Mesopotamia, if you walk barefoot, absolutely is impossible. That he was dire state. He was in need of a boot. And he pinpointed there is a boot. If this patient dies, I will get the manage to get the boot. At the one hand is treating the patient to bring him out of the danger. And the other hand is saying, when will he die? Then I get the boot. That is the beauty of any of the characters. That contradiction.
You know, I have a question.
That is
Sorry, please. Sorry. No, please go ahead, please.
That kind of contradiction is there in Dwarikanath also. He is treating that kind of Amodini.
Yes.
He was told not to go there. Even then he is going there. And he was so drawn to Amodini, the patient which was survived on his treatment of this cholera patient. When he married this Saraswati, he christened her to Amodini only. Just to remember Amodini. So that is another character of Dwarikanath.
Arunava, I have a question for you about, you know, I was very, very intrigued by the lady Holkar's character in the book, only because at some point as a reader, I was wondering why was this lady introduced with leprosy and what, you know, and then she has a long-standing sort of relationship, in a way, short with Kritindranath. And I was just wondering, you know, how does this fit into the trajectory of the story as such, besides the fact that, you know, he's traveling from one place to the other and he's a restless soul in that sense. So what do both of you have to say about this character? I found it very interesting, you know, and of course...
Let Arunava talk first, then I'll tell.
Yeah, sure, Ashok.
No, so as a translator, I don't have any particular authority to talk about this. But what struck me about their encounter was that the eccentrics always find one another.
Yeah.
And so these are the outliers, right? They're both living lives which are not in the mainstream. And inevitably you find that people who are living on the periphery, they end up finding one another. So to me, this was just vindication of such a thing. And what I kept thinking was that Kritindranath's travels are not fully documented here. We are only getting a few glimpses of them.
Yes.
And I was thinking that actually makes for another novel of its own, where you know, yeah, in a very different tradition, where he is not primarily a doctor. He is this wandering character who also happens to be a doctor. And that could lend itself to a very interesting, different kind of fiction trajectory.
I think that's so interesting, right, that you said this, because it'll be so fascinating to read about his travels and the people he encounters. Ashoka, what do you think about the whole Holkar episode and, you know, what went on there?
When a good-looking person, especially a lady, I mean, due to some kind of reason, and this case is a disease like leprosy, when he looks bad, not that charming now, and that to an elegant family, is an aristocrat family, where there is a little chance to interact with anyone. Then, given a chance, he always try to calibrate, he try to examine how charming I am, how sensuous I am. So that is the psychology of, especially with ladies, when an elegant kind of lady, and that too very charming lady. And for that he was part of that kind of family. When she finds that I'm not that kind of charming anymore, just to taste that, whether can I not that kind of charming? Do I have that kind of prowess? So for that only people used to do that kind of, when for that kind of sex. They will just taste their skill. They will taste that whether that kind of prowess is there in me. Still have that kind of ability to do it on me. You must have noticed that this kind of character in other ways also. when somebody fails to do something, when someone says that no, you're not able to, they always try to do that whether I'll be able to meet the challenge of this kind of life or not. So this is a common psychology. Nothing. I mean,
True.
you have seen this kind of character. Suppose somebody, when you are limping, when somebody has gone kind of crutch, what he does, what she does, he try to walk properly, so that without that kind of, that kind of leg, I can still also do the same kind of perform. That is the challenge for any human being, and they try to meet the challenge. So this is that kind of lady, very optimistic lady. Once she ruled the family once upon a time, now we cannot. She doesn't get that kind of respect nowadays also. We are put to absolute basement kind of stuff. So Nasir, what we will do? Given a chance, you always do that kind of thing. Actually, she wants to prevail on others in the life. That's why he brought in Pritindra in that kind of room. He invited to stay there. Why? Because now I've got a guinea pig. I have to try out that. And never ever have said that Pritindra went to her. She used to come to Pritindra. And she used to come like a waterfalls.
Yeah. That's
like
it.
a storm in his life. And that's why I written that. Not that the other way down. Pritindra never went there. She used to come to his place. Just to show that, yes, I have that kind of ability now. I want to give a proof to you. He wants to, by showing the proof, giving the proof to Kritindo, actually he's trying to show it to the world, yes, I can. That is the attitude. That is the attitude of any aristocrat royal family. They will do it. They will go to the world to show that, yes, I can do it. That is their character. Small character, but that is the beauty of the character.
True. Thank you, Ashokda. Guys, do you have any questions for either Arunava or Ashokda, please? You can unmute yourselves and ask them. Hema, Shweta, Swati, do you have any questions? Okay. I think they don't have any questions. For
yes,
me, sorry, go on, Ashokda, please. Sorry, you were saying.
The subject is so serious or complicated. I mean, unless someone reads the book, I don't think that, questioning will be a difficult kind of proposition.
No, I think all of you, if the three of you haven't read the book, please read the book. It is just wonderful, and it just opens your mind to so many things, science and non-science, and non-medical and non-medical. And I think everyone should read this book. I know for me, it is not about I think it's just about the story of a family and the people connected to the family through medicine. That is actually for me the crux of the book. Besides the medicine, I think that one just immersed me so much in this book that I just couldn't put it down, because it was just, I just had to know that, what's going to happen with the characters. Like Arunava said, what is the fate of these characters? Like suddenly you take them, to the hills, and suddenly they are in Calcutta, and the history. I think a historic novel is so difficult to venture into, and that you've already spoken about your research. But I think the intricacies of history that you bring into the book are just so varied and so beautifully done. So thank you once again, both of you, for writing this book. I mean, it just took me on a very, very splendid journey from the 1800s to 1964 and so on and so forth. Thank you, both of you, Ashok and Arunava. Thank you so much.
Vivek, can I have something add in the last? Can I do
sure,
that?
Please.
First of all, those who have not read the book, for them only, let me clarify. My book is neither a history of medical sciences, nor is an account of discoveries in the medical sciences during 1867 to 1967, the period of the novel. but it's there. Fragments of history are there, and there are discoveries too. I use this as a backdrop of my non-linear narrative, only as a backdrop. And it is deliberately done. It is deliberately done just to amplify those characteristics of a human being which are there in the person as microorganisms, as atomic droplets. And some of these like deep love, philanthropy, aggression, anger, pathos, sense of loss, nervousness, betrayal, despair, superstitions, and hope come out on the open in more magnified form under disease condition. That's why I have used this diseases as a backdrop. End of the day, it is the narrative of the relationships of human being only, nothing else. That is I want to tell you, those who have not read the book.
It's just fantastic, Ashoka. That insight is just, I'm going to think and rethink and go back to the book very soon. And then, read it with that perspective as well. Arunava, your thoughts before I bring a close to this?
No, it was so immersive that, the hardest thing for a translator, I don't know how a writer feels, but it's very hard for a translator when they're done translating a book that they're so deeply immersed in. It's really like a personal loss. You know that you can't go back and translate it again from the beginning. And in a sense, it also reminded me of the fact that the doctors in this novel lose their near and dear ones.
Yeah.
And, that ultimate point of intersection when a doctor is facing the death of someone they love. It's such a unique moment.
Yeah, it is.
And those moments exist in this book more than once.
More than once, yes. And for me, I think one very, very pivotal character, Amodhini, which we speak about so much in the book, and the entire moments that Dwarikanath becomes so sensitive and so emotional when he's with his wife, dancing and singing songs and all of that. I think it just struck such a big chord in me when that came to be. But I definitely understand what you mean. So thank you so much, both of you, again, for doing what you've done with this book. And thank you for this conversation. I had a great time chatting with the two of you. Thank you very much. And guys, once again, please read A Ballad of Remittent Fever. It is just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vivek. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Good night.
Good night.